Well, greetings again to everybody at Azura. I'm so pleased to have you joining us today. You know, the Christmas season is pretty special. And one of the favorite treats of Christmas, I think, is candy canes. And I'm going to share a story today called The Legend of the Candy Cane. And it's written by Lori Wahlberg, and it's illustrated by James Bernard. Let me see what this story might be all about. One dreary evening, in the depth of November, a stranger rode into town. He stopped his horse in front of a lonely storefront. The windows were boarded up, and the door was locked fast. But the man looked at it, smiled, and said, "Huh, this will do." All through the gray short days and the long dark nights in November, the man worked and worked, and the townspeople could hear the faint bang, bang, bang of his hammer and the swish, swish, swish of his saw. They could smell the sweet, clean scent of new lumber and the deep, oily smell of new paint. But no one knew what the man was or what he was doing. Here he is, sawing in his shop. The mayor hoped he was a doctor to heal the illness. The young wives hoped he was a tailor to make beautiful dresses. The farmers hoped he was a trader to exchange their grain for goods. But the children had the strongest, deepest wish of all, a wish they did not tell their parents. A deep, quiet, secret wish that none of them said out loud. No one spoke the name. No one asked if they needed help. They just waited and watched and wondered and wished. But one small girl watched and wondered and waited and wondered and whispered long enough, and she couldn't stand it any longer. And one snowy day, she knocked on the stranger's door and said, "Hello, my name is Lucy. Do you need some help?" The man smiled warmly and nodded. And then he opened the door, and Lucy stepped inside. A long counter ran the side of the room. Bare shelves filled the opposite walls. In the back was dozens and dozens and dozens of bait crates and barrels. "Could you help me unpack?" the man asked. And there's Lucy. See her there? She's wondering what she can do to help. Well, Lucy's heart sank at the sight of all those boxes. What if they were only barrels of nails? Or bags of flour? But she removed her dripping boots and hung up her coat on the peg. With stocking feet, she crossed the rough wooden floor and knelt beside a grate. "Please open it," the man urged. Slowly, Lucy put her hand into the box and pulled out an object wrapped with tissue, round and heavy. It almost slipped through her fingers. Lucy trembled a little as she unwrapped it. There she is, hanging up her coat on the peg. Well, it was a glass jar. Lucy gave the man a puzzled look. "Go on," he nodded. So she unpacked another glass jar, and another glass jar, and another glass jar, until she completely was surrounded by jars, all shapes and sizes. Tall and thin, round and squat, jars with lids, and jars without. "Now," the man said, "for something to put inside." And he pulled over a huge crate stamped with the word, a strange word. As Lucy unpacked, her eyes lit up. It was candy! Her favorite candy, gumdrops. "Try some," the man said. She popped one into her mouth. Now she could hardly unwrap fast enough. Peppermint sticks and taffy and lollipops and chewing gum. Wide-eyed, she looked at the man. "We wish," Lucy said. "Yeah, I know," said the man, "and here it is. Welcome to Sumner's Candy Store. I am John Sumner. Soon this small store was filled with candies gleaming in their jars. Raspberry suckers, tiny lemon drops, brightly colored jawbreakers, long tangles of licorice, pink and white peppermints for church, and butterscotch balls for company. Then in the very last package, in the very last crate, was a candy Lucy had never seen before. A red and a white striped candy stick with a crook on the end. "What is this?" Lucy asked. "Well," Mr. Sumner explained, "this is a candy cane. It's a very special Christmas candy." "Why?" Lucy said. "Tell me," Mr. Sumner said. "What letter does it look like?" See, he turned it upside down. If you turn a candy cane upside down, what letter would it look like? It would look like a J, wouldn't it? Lucy took the candy and turned it in her hand. "It's a J," she said. "Yes," Mr. Sumner smiled. "J for Jesus, who was born on Christmas Day." Now, turn it over. What does it remind you of now? And Lucy turned the candy in her hand. She peered down intently. "I know," she said finally. "It's like a shepherd's staff." "Who were the first to find out about Jesus' birth?" Mr. Sumner asked. "The shepherds in the fields," Lucy answered, "watching over their flocks by night." And here's a picture. It's kind of a dark picture, so I don't know if you can see it, but it is shepherds out in the fields around a bonfire, and they're watching the star, and of course there is a shepherd hook, which does look very much like a candy cane. "But Mr. Sumner, what are the stripes for?" Lucy asked. Well, the man's eyes grew sad. "The prophet Isaiah said, 'By his stripes we would be healed.' Before he died on the cross, Jesus was whipped and bled terribly. The red reminds us of his suffering and of his blood." But then, Mr. Sumner continued, "the candy is white as well. When you give our lives to Jesus, his blood washes away our sins, making us white and pure snow." That, he said, is the story of the Christmas cane. "Is it a secret?" Lucy asked. Mr. Sumner looked at her for a long moment. "It's a story that needs to be told," he said. "Will you help me to share it?" By now, it was the midst of December. The town was whipped around by blizzard winds. 4 days the sun hid itself. But every morning, Mr. Sumner and Lucy ventured out. They wore heavy woolen coats and bright scarves, and in their stiff, mitted fingers, they each held a bag. And they went to every house in town. They traveled to every farm in the country. They knocked on every door, in every home, and they told the story. They left a small gift, and they gave an invitation. And on that Christmas Eve, the sun finally broke through the clouds, and Sumner's Candy Store officially opened. The mayor came, feeling better than he felt for days. The young wives came, dressed in beautiful smiles, and the farmers came, eager to trade grain for Christmas gifts. The children ran in dizzy circles. Yes, their wish had come true. Yes, they had come to share in the opening of the candy store. But they shared something more, something bigger, and something better. And on that Christmas night, They shared the story of the candy cane. They told of the miracles of Jesus' birth and the misery of his death and the mercy of his love. The traditional candy cane, as we know it, was created over 350 years ago. It is used by creating white sugar and hardening that sugar into a shape. The use of candy canes in the Christmas service spread throughout Europe at first. Sugar canes decorated with sugar roses were used to brighten the homes at Christmas time. In the mid-1800s, the candy cane arrived in the United States with German, Swedish immigrants who decorated spruce trees with paper ornaments and red and white striped candy canes. Well, that's the story, a little bit of history too, about the legend of candy canes. You know, I like candy canes. I have eaten a few in my day. They are quite delicious, aren't they? So, again, I hope you've had a Merry Christmas. I hope you had the chance to indulge and have a candy cane or two or three. And I wish you a very happy, happy New Year. Thank you to all our friends at Azura. Be well, stay safe, and bye for now.